Hey guys, Mr. Ridgway here. So we're going to be moving on for our last lesson of this unit, and that is on the Partition of India. Now I know that this may not seem like it is super related to World War II, but it happens just after World War II in 1947. And with that, I know there's going to be some questions on it that are going to come up in your tests, and kind of talking about how decolonization works. We get to see what connections happens there. So there's some valuable stuff there that we can check out. So let's go ahead and dive into the lesson and see what we need to do. So first of all, make sure you go ahead and log in with Pear Deck. That way everything is available, and then so we'll get going. So if your warm-up, really simple, try to do it without your notes if you can. Write or draw one success and one failure of the United Nations. Okay. Once you've done that, then you can go on to our next slide. And you can see here that we're really going to be talking about India's independence after World War II, and then the kind of what that looks like, and then the effects of something called the partition. And that will lead us into the book that we're going to be reading at the end of this semester, which is I Am Malala. So, first things first, we really can't talk about India's independence without talking about this dude, and that's Gandhi. You need to get at least a very basic, rudimentary understanding of Gandhi's role that he had in the independence movement. Now, please understand, it's not like just because single-handedly because of Gandhi's actions that that Britain will decide to give up its hold on India. But he is a significant figure that deserves some attention, and to that degree, what I'd like you to do here, okay, is there is a story map right here that I'd like you to check out. It's really easy to navigate through, and then just post on Pear Deck what you believe Gandhi's most significant action was that he took during his efforts against the British. Awesome. So once you've done that, we can go on, and then we're going to jump right into the mini lesson on the painful partition of India. Okay. So our goal here is very simple, and that is just to understand kind of the general flow of how independence happens, and then second, to actually talk about what the effects of the partition of India were. Okay, now please understand that this is not going to be a very rapid mini lesson compared to some things that you might, for example, like you would learn about like in a college course or something like that. We're trying to understand just the very rudimentary basics here of a really, really important event that not a lot of people know about. So first, we're kind of jumping in here to the one effect of the end of World War II that we really didn't get a chance to talk about, or at least not very many of you will probably know about. And that's, well, what happens to a lot of places and colonies after World War II. And here we're going to look at what happens in India. So again, Gandhi being a major influential figure in this movement, but not the only one. Okay, you can see that there's all these different groups that are down here in the bottom right that are involved in some way in the Indian nationalist movement, and by far the most dominant two, okay, pushing for independence in various degrees, were the Indian National Congress, which is led by a guy by the last name of Nehru, and then Gandhi would also kind of fall in there as well, and then another group by a guy by the name of Muhammad Jinnah, who is kind of pushing inside of something called the Muslim League, or as it's just more commonly known, the League. But there's a lot of whole debates and very, very rich tensions that happen back and forth about what independence should look like. There's groups who believe that this should be, the British should be more violently opposed. There's others like that more kind of ascribe to like more moderate views like Gandhi. There's others who say, well, like, if we are going to have our independence, should this be done in a united way? When independence happens, what's going to be the relationship of all the different, extremely diverse elements of Indian society and culture, whether that's, the provinces being related to, what's the relationship they're going to have next to, like, the central parts of India where a lot of people live. What about Hindus versus Muslims, which there's those two large, religious groups in India. And then, what about this whole idea that's very popular after World War I and World War II, self-determination? Like, should people, be able to live in just areas that are common with their particular ethno-linguistic religious group, or should we try to like create some kind of element of unity with lots of diverse peoples in it? And there's many rich debates that go back and forth. And so I want to kind of show you this here on slides as an example of this. So right here, like you can see just as a sample, that India has just a lot of overlap at this time in terms of where people are settled. And so I've given you this example here about religious divides. And so like you can see, and you'll see the maps here change. So like we can see where the predominant concentrations of Muslims are in India is kind of up in the northwest and then in the northeast. This will later become, spoilers, Pakistan, and then this over here. And then Kashmir's up here, I guess, as well. We should mention that. And then also this would be Bengal over here. And then if we kind of then change, we can see how this really shifts. And I may have to go back here and jump out of the slides to show you this, and that's okay. So you can see, like, we look at the slides and it's like, oh, well, all of a sudden, wow, like you can see that, some of these things, overlap. And indeed they do. What's really important to recognize here is that these communities aren't distinctive. They're overlaid. They are intermixed with one another. And it's not just Hindus and Muslims. It's Sikh and different. There's Urdu language groups and Pashtun and Hindi and also English there too to a degree. So there's all these immensely complicated lines that exist in and throughout society, and they're not always super distinctive. And that's going to be really important here for us as we kind of look at how things are going to be basically appearing and not appearing. Okay. When it comes to independence. So that then brings us to partition itself. Okay. So various groups that we just talked about are giving the British all these inputs as to what they would like. And so, for example, you can see like down there in the bottom right, I've included a meeting between Muhammad Jinnah. He's kind of the second guy to the left there, the taller of the individuals. And then they're meeting here, trying to figure out what the country is going to look like. And there's all these different proposals that come up. The British first want to go for a federal system, where like think of it like the United States, how we'd like have like different states for different groups of people in an all India country. The Muslim League is actually okay with this at first, but then in the Indian National Congress rejects this, and it comes up with like, okay, well, like if we allow certain territories to exist and not others, then that's not fair to us, and there's all these debates that go back and forth. Eventually what the British decide to do, they scrap that plan, and they say, okay, here's the solution. We're going to partition or split India into two countries, technically three eventually, but majoritarily for our purposes here, two. India for Hindus and Pakistan for Muslims. And the lines drawn that the British make here, that I'm about to show you, it's going to leave people, whether they're Sikh, Hindu, Muslim, it's going to leave them on the wrong side of some of these borders. So if you look at this line here, like if we were to go back and overlay like some of those maps that we looked at before, so like here's Pakistan, right, that is going to be set up for Muslims. There's Muslims living in India and there's Hindus living in Pakistan. Like this is going to be an issue. And the same thing over here with East Pakistan, which again will eventually become its own country. So what happens is when the British make this decision, so Lord Mountbatten, he's the guy who's in charge of this, he like shows up, and it's kind of the fall of 1947, and all across the country, just these massive waves of spontaneous violence, huge amounts of displacement of people, the rape of nearly 100,000 women by some estimates, and just destruction happens as families and people are desperately trying to get themselves onto the correct side of whatever border they should or should not be on. And nearly 1 million people are going to die. This is also because of the events that happen because of this starts a very nasty, long-running rivalry between India and Pakistan that has really persisted to the modern day, between everything from who owns resources, because like if a river flows through India and ends up in Pakistan, like, you know, that causes issues over water, you know, over it gets to even like nuclear weapons, because both India and Pakistan nowadays have nuclear weapons, and territory itself like Kashmir that you can see there on that map. Again, huge amounts of issues happen here in terms of the British decision to go with this as the plan. There's a video here I'd like you to watch. You only need to watch about 6 minutes of it, by my estimates. We may watch a little bit more in class depending on time and interest. But I'd like you to write 2 effects of the partition in Pear Deck that you saw in the video. So I saw how the partition, and then fill in the blank from there. Okay? Once you do that, we are actually going to end the block with passing out the I Am Malala books and talking about our purpose in reading it, and how that connects to things like the Taliban and Afghanistan, things that have happened more recently, that also by proxy have to do with very directly things in Pakistan. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of elementary walkthrough, and I'll see you in class. Bye-bye.